In. Good boy. Come on, buddy. One of the toughest questions that I get asked is by parents, how can I end this addiction, or what can I do to cure my child? So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Before we do, I have a favor to ask of you. If you like this video, if you think it's an important topic, please like it. If you find this series helpful, please follow it. If you want more information than we can possibly cover in a very short video, please refer back to the books. If you have watched the video, watched the series, read the books, please review them, because one of the greatest gifts you can give to anyone, me as an author, general public, or even you yourself, is to like, follow, and review. And here's why. It tells me what I'm doing right and wrong, so I can give you a better product. It raises us overall in the standings so that it's easier for other people to find us. And when they do find us, it tells them whether or not you thought this was a video series or a book series that they would find helpful. So please consider liking, following, and reviewing. Back to the topic. What can I do to cure my child, or how can I end this addiction? Okay? Scripture tells us very clearly that the father will pay for the sins of the father, the son will pay for the sins of the son, the mother will pay for her own sins, and the daughter will pay for her own sins. Each is held individually responsible for their own actions. And this only makes sense if each of us have the ability to make our own choices and our own decisions. For the purpose of this video, though, the takeaway here is on ownership. If I have the ability to make my own decisions, you don't have the ability to make my decisions for me. I mean, it really is an either or. If you have the ability to make my decisions, I don't have the ability to make my decisions. If I have the ability to make my decisions, the most you could do is influence. Ownership is an important concept to understand, to really truly grasp. Because here's the deal. If I have the ability to make my decisions, you don't have the ability to make my decisions for me. The most you could do would be to influence my ultimate decision. But if you have the ability to make my decision for me, then I don't have the ability to make a decision at all. Okay? So it comes down to ownership. If you have the ability to decide when I'm going to do drugs, how I'm going to do drugs, how much drugs I'm going to do, to the point that I became addicted, then you own the addiction. But you didn't. You didn't have the right to decide when he or she started to use drugs. You didn't have the right to decide when he or she really started to heavily abuse drugs. And you didn't have a say in whether or not they became addicted. As a typical parent, I would bet money on the fact that you probably wanted nothing to do with them having drug use or drug addiction. Therefore, you don't own this addiction. And that's really important. Let's build on that a little bit more, shall we? The reason ownership is so important to understand is because of this. If you don't own the problem, you don't own the responsibility to fix it. Now, let's go a little bit deeper. If you don't own the responsibility to fix it, you don't own the ability to fix it. And that statement was never more true than in addiction. You had no say in when they started using drugs. You had no say in how much drugs they were using. You had no say in whether or not they became addicted. You have no say in this addiction and when it ends. They had say in when they started to use drugs. They had say in how much drugs they used. They had say in whether or not it developed into an addiction. Now, I'm not saying they went out seeking an addiction, but it was ultimately their choice. Let's be real. And here's the important thing for ownership. This addiction will end not 1 second earlier than when they decide that it ends. All your money, you cannot buy an addicted loved one clean. All your talks and arguments and debates with them, you can't argue an addicted loved one clean. All your penalties and restrictions, you can't punish an addicted loved one clean. But that doesn't mean that you are completely without any power or influence at all. There are things that you can do to influence your addicted child to make the right choice, to choose wisely. For example, the way you talk with them, interact with them, engage with them, love them, discipline them, hold them accountable, stop enabling. All of that stuff has an impact. It may not seem like it, but it doesn't take too long of dropping those stones before you end up with a pile like this. It still doesn't dictate when they're going to get clean, but it's a lot harder to overcome those than you thought at first. And that is a comforting thought.